But being committed to your conscious unfoldment, to your conscious evolution, it changes kind of what you do, what activities you engage in, what people you hang with, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, what media you consume. A commitment to conscious living changes you. It means that you are committed to living your life from the inside out, based on who you came here to be. You spend a fair amount of time focused on your inner world, knowing your purpose. And if any of you forgot, I talked about this last week, but I do like to affirm, knowing your purpose. Our purpose is that we are here to grow in consciousness, back to the divinity from which we came. That's why we're here. As people committed to conscious evolution, we know that. So that whatever is happening in the world outside us or the world around us, our reflection on what's happening out here is, how am I being about that? How does this align or misalign with my values? How does this align or misalign with who I am and who I'm committed to being? And most importantly, people who are committed to conscious evolution, this is the hard pill to swallow. You ready? People who are committed to conscious evolution are willing to be 100% responsible for their way of being in the world. Dag, isn't that a drag? Willing to be 100% responsible for what you think, for how you feel, for how you perceive. You're willing to be 100% responsible for your belief system and what you believe. When you live that way, you create a quantum leap forward in your evolution and consciousness. When you're willing to say, I'm responsible for the way that my life is. Then you take this quantum leap toward your evolution and consciousness, but also toward the relief and the freedom that you seek. Without assuming 100% responsibility for the way your life is, the way you are, and the way life is, without assuming 100% responsibility for that, you are thwarting your spiritual growth. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that you cannot grow spiritually without assuming 100% responsibility for the way that you are, the way that you experience life. Not for what's happening around you necessarily. That's another talk for another day. how your way of being impacts the quantum field and changes what's happening around you. That's a whole other talk. But for now, let's just be with, I'm going to be responsible for how I think, how I feel, what's happening in my inner world and what's happening, how I respond to what's happening outside of me, yes? And when you're willing to live that way, I'm going to go a step further. When you're willing to live that way, you have to give up the luxury of believing that your experience is created by anything outside of you. You have to give up the luxury of believing that anyone outside of you causes your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts. Because look, let's face it, it's a whole lot easier to think it's somebody else's fault. It's a whole lot easier to think somebody else is causing my experience. But when you do that, when you say it's because of them, it's because of this, it's because of the past, it's because of the politicians, it's because of the economy, when you do that, you are thwarting your own spiritual potential. So in other words, what I'm saying is you must assume personal power. It is only in that way that you begin to engage in the spiritual process. Howard Thurman, an American author, theologian, and civil rights activist, in his 1972 book called The Creative Encounter, says, "There is a world within where the great issues of our lives are determined." There is a world within where the great issues of our lives are determined. It is private and silent. It is where we communicate with the field of all potential via the vibration and frequency of our thoughts. It is up to us how we use it. I love this. Our power resides in how we use it. So there's this inner world that we have. And I love the line, it is private and silent. Sometimes we forget that, right? We think that what's happening in our inner world is just what's happening. It's not. What's happening in your inner world is private and silent. It is where we communicate with the energetic field of all that is, of life itself. It is where we communicate with God through the pure potential of the vibration and the frequency of how we think and how we feel. I love that he says, our power resides in how we use it. That's where our power lies. Notice he says that it resides in how we use it, not why we think the way we think, not why we feel the way we feel. Why do I feel that way? I just wish I knew. I wish I knew why I think that way. I wish I knew how I am this way. How is the question of our times. Why was the question of a previous era? Why are things this way? Why can't I change? Because, be with me in this thought, why is a disempowering thought? It's disempowering. Why? Let me tell you. Because you can make up why forever. Or you can say, well, I just don't know why. And when you say, I don't know why, you get relieved of any responsibility for having to change it. Well, I don't know why. I just wish I knew. Why questions give rise to stagnation, inaction, victimization. We create justifications and rationalizations for the way that we are. And those justifications and rationalizations disempower us because they relieve you of any responsibility for having to change it. How often do you say to yourself, well, I can't help it, that's just the way I think. I can't help it, that's just the way I feel. The truth is you can help it, and in fact, that is where your spiritual growth begins. Because the you of you, your spiritual essence, has the power to alter your inner world. The question that we need to be asking today is, how does anything move from the invisible field of thought and emotional energy into the visible field of creation? How does that happen? How does it happen that we create our outer world through the vibratory pattern of our inner world? That is a question worth looking into. How do we create our world? You know, I really believe that in order to create a better world, we need to start asking better questions. We need to start asking better questions. To ask better questions, we need more wisdom. Right? Our world is inundated with knowledge and information. We've all got that little computer in our pocket 24/7. We can get information in a second at our fingertips. We are inundated with information and knowledge, and our world is starving for wisdom. That's what unity provides. Wisdom at depth. And in order to bring more wisdom into the world, you have to learn to master your inner world of thought and emotion. You will never get to a place of wisdom by blaming somebody else for your experience of life. That is not wisdom. That's easy. It's a luxury to blame other people. I want you to make a commitment to yourself today that you're just not willing to do that any longer. No matter what it looks like, no matter what the outer world is, I'm responsible for how I see it, what I say to myself about it, how I experience it. Wisdom means mastering the self. And mastering the self requires that you do this inner work. That living in this natural and divine state of unity, oneness, peace. People talk about the spiritual experience, right? You hear people talk about like they had this oneness experience or they had this experience of bliss and that, you know, their awakening experience. That is our natural spiritual state. That is what we were born into. It is how we live that takes us out of that. Marianne Williamson sent a beautiful post out this morning saying that she recognized one day this week that she was feeling a little off, a little bit depressed, and then she traced back her day, and when she got up, she picked up her phone and started looking at social media and emails. She said, normally I start my day going to my spiritual chair, my center, and reading A Course in Miracles, doing the course lesson for the day, and then meditating. And she said, how we open our minds, how we begin our day, infusing our consciousness with the Word of God, with wisdom, with the Word of the Spirit, sets your mind, when you are in that most receptive space, sets your mind for the day. Wrong use of thought, wrong use of emotion causes all manner of suffering. It's time for us to recognize that you've got to get present to the fact that of how you use your thought and emotion versus the other way around. Are your thoughts just using you, just living you? Are your emotions just living you? That's the way that we've been living. And it's not going to bring us to the world we want to make. Our million dreams will not be fulfilled living fully in the human condition, because the fully human condition is what's brought us to where we are today. We have got to make that transition to be living in the fullness of our divinity. And to do that, you do not have the luxury to be casual about how you use your mind. You do not have the luxury to be casual about how you use your emotions. You are using them in habitual patterns. Procrastination is just a set of skills and habits. Depression is a set of skills and habits that you've repeated over time. When you change your thinking, and by the way, I was chronically depressed for many years and on antidepressant medications. How you use your thoughts, how you use your body, how you use your mind. We have got to call ourselves to a higher level. Raymond Charles Barker, in his book, The Science of Successful Living, phenomenal book. I came upon it last summer and was like, how did I miss this book all my life? So good. The Science of Successful Living. He says, the mind of God is the source of our thinking, and the love of God is the source of our feeling nature. Let me say that again. The mind of God is the source of our thinking nature, and the love of God is the source of our feeling nature. And I love that notion. It really uplifts me, and at the same time, I have to say, I struggle with it a little bit. I struggle with it because I say, if I am one with the mind of God, and if the mind of God is my thinking nature, why do I think such shitty thoughts? If my emotions are from the love of God, why do I feel so bad sometimes? Why do I struggle with life itself? Why do I end up feeling like such a loser? Feeling like my life doesn't matter? Feeling like my work doesn't make a difference in the world? We are fully human and fully divine. And this human life is really hard sometimes. Thank you, Mickey. So while these thoughts that I have, I'm a sucky mother is the most recent one. Anybody else? Thank you. I'm a sucky parent. My life isn't all that important. I don't make a difference in the world. Anybody else? Is it just me? Thank you. See, this is what gives me comfort, gives me pleasure. See, I'm not the only one. It is the human condition. And it's really hard. So while these thoughts and feelings are unpleasant, they're painful, I've learned a few things about them. First of all, and most importantly, they're not freaking true. How many of you think my work doesn't matter? How many of you think my life is for naught? None of you. That's what's happening in the silent world of my inner thoughts. The silent, private world. I love that Howard Thurman quote. They're not true. That is such a critical and elemental part of our spiritual growth. Your thoughts and your emotions are not an objective truth. It is happening in the silence of your own inner world. So they're not the truth of your existence, and they're not you. Your thoughts are not you. They're just thoughts. They're not like the truth. If you ask somebody, do I suck? They'll be like, no. Unless they say yes, then you just deal with that too. So the first thing I realize is that they're not true, but the second thing I realize is where it gets really dicey. While they're not true, they do define your experience of life to the degree to which you believe them. What you think and what you feel determines what you do, determines the risks that you take or won't take, determines how much money you make. What you tell yourself and what you tell yourself about life and about the world and about people around you becomes your reality. You know, we tell ourselves some pretty crappy things sometimes. I want to give you an example. Retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. He's in 2012, he was on his third tour in Afghanistan. And while he was working with a crew clearing an area, they had finished clearing, they were done for the day, he took his pack off and dropped it, and it landed on an IED, an explosive device, improvised explosive device. And he was, blown into many pieces, actually. He survived. He was only one of 5 quadruple amputees to survive that in the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Only 5 people who went through that survived. And he did. And he recalls in a just amazing talk that he gives when he woke in his bed at the hospital and recognized the condition that he was in. His first thought was, why did I live? Why didn't I just die? Why do I have to suffer like this? Because I'm not going to be able to support my wife and my daughter. I can't support my family. I can't do the things that matter to me. So, why even bother? He told, when his wife came to see him and he was conscious enough to have a conversation with her, he said, just take the house, take the car, take our savings, just go and make a good life for yourself and our daughter because I won't be able to be any good for you. That's what he thought. And that's how he felt. And of course, nobody is going to, criticize the guy after going through such an incredible tragedy, incredible loss where he is now a quadruple amputee. Nobody's going to blame him for that until some other retired military amputees visited him in the hospital. And they talked to him about what was possible. They talked to him about a million dreams. They talked to him about the fact that he could go on to recover, to live, and make a difference. So when he realized that he had a choice about how to use his mind. He had a choice about what he was going to think. He had a choice about how he was going to say things to himself and how he was going to feel. So he decided to stop asking, why did this happen to me? Or why didn't I just die? And instead he started asking, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to take care of my family? And most importantly, who do I need to be? He went on to recover. He formed a nonprofit organization, the proceeds from which go towards supporting injured military veterans in their lives and their recovery. And he also went on to form a company where he consults doing inspirational speaking all around the United States. So one of the ways that we can live rightly, live on the right side, live our fully divine nature is to recognize that your thoughts and emotions are not true and that you must become clear on how to use your mind. So I'm going to teach you just 3 really simple things. You guys with me? Everybody following, tracking? Yeah. So I'm going to teach you just 3 really simple things today that are going to help you. Because then, it's like, okay, I get it. I got to use my mind better. This is my constant practice. How am I using my mind? My commitment is to make my life a living prayer. My life a living prayer. That's like who I am when I'm driving the car, when I'm chilling with my family, when I'm playing basketball. They might not agree with that. That's my constant prayer. Make my life a living prayer. And to do that, you have to constantly be paying attention to your conscious evolution, paying attention to what's happening in your mind. So I'm going to teach you 3 things. They all have a spatial reference just to make it easy for you to remember. I'm going to teach you the magic of learning to distance, to immerse, and then to shift. So going out, going in, and then shifting to the side. The first is distancing. Do you ever notice that, like, kind of when you're in that ruminating space of like not feeling too good and you're saying these nasty things to yourself about yourself, your focus is really kind of inner. And what neuroscience says is if you can shift from that kind of like inner immersive experience, believing that your thoughts and kind of dwelling on those negative feelings, if you can just shift by literally casting your gaze outer, particularly if you can cast your gaze on anything of nature or beauty or awe. So if you have an altar at home and you're in that ruminating space, just looking at your altar. If you have a beautiful window that you can just look outside, looking at nature. I just love this stuff. Looking at nature has shown to increase your immune system, reduce stress. And hospitals, they did a study where people who had green space outside their hospital windows versus people who just have bricks buildings, and those who have green space recover faster, right? So shifting from that inner kind of ruminating space, when you catch yourself, right? So maybe you're being used by your thoughts. You're being used by your thoughts, and it's going on and on and on. But then you notice. Like you have that moment of awakening, like, oh gosh, there I go again. I'm doing it. I'm being lived by something other than I want to be lived by. In that moment, just shift. Look out the window. Look at something beautiful. Maybe you have a picture on your desk. Maybe you're driving in the car. How many of you ruminate when you're driving in the car? It's amazing more of us don't get our butts killed, isn't it? Right? Like get in that ruminating space when you're driving and you're like, oh, wait, I'm doing it. Just look, we live in New England, right? Just look off. There'll be beautiful trees all around you. Take that in. Just a simple thing, and it shifts you. It shifts your neurological processing. It shifts your emotional state. Distance rather than going into it. Second one is go into it. Immerse yourself, but you don't do that when you're in that rah, rah, rah state. You do that when you have a moment of awe, when you're like really happy, like right now. You're like, go right into it. Don't think about lunch. Just be like right here, right now. So when you're having that positive experience and it feels good, you're hugging a friend. Don't be hugging your friend thinking, I got to get going. What time is it? That sense of hurry sickness that we all live with. You have got to let go of that sense of always being in a hurry when you're just having that beautiful moment. Connected with a friend or hearing a beautiful piece of music. Close out and immerse into that experience. And then the third one is shifting. When you're in that kind of, and the negative thoughts and you're feeling heavy, shifting from what's wrong to what's right. What's wrong with me to what's right with me. What's wrong with the world to what's right with the world. And shifting particularly through gratitude. If we could bottle up all of the positive benefits of gratitude and put it in a pill, we would all be bazillionaires. There's so much research that shows that shifting into a state of gratitude, whether it's writing in a journal or writing a letter or an email of gratitude expression, or even recounting things just mentally in your mind, how you are using your mind. There's all kinds of evidence that shows that it reduces stress, increases your happiness, and even increases your immune system, improves your immune system. So I just want you to notice how you feel right now. Maybe you're feeling engaged, maybe you're a little irritated, my talk's too long. Maybe you're wondering when I'm going to stop this. I don't know, like just notice how you're feeling right now, like kind of happy. Okay, just notice. Now, I want you to just shout out some things that you're grateful for. Let's recount as a community, what are we grateful for? Community, what, Stan? Prosperity, community, what else? Marriage, is that what you said, your marriage? Family, yeah. What'd you say? Your sister, I'm grateful for your sister too. Lisa Polonzi, I'm so grateful for your recovery. Oh, thank you, Anne. That's so sweet. She's grateful for me. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I'm grateful that Shipley Allenson created this ministry, gosh, how many years ago? 30 years ago? How many? About 25-ish plus years ago. Anyway, I'm grateful that this ministry was created. I'm grateful for the Unity Movement. I'm grateful that it's spring in New England. Woo! Right? Now, notice, how do you feel? Did your energy come up just a little bit? I mean, even if you were like starting at a pretty good place, it still came up a little bit. That is the power and the magic of learning how to use your mind. I taught you in the last 5 minutes 3 techniques that, like, how you can use your mind rightly. And those techniques, while they might sound neuroscience-y because I'm a science and spirituality geek, they're spiritual practices. Because what makes it a spiritual practice is your consciousness of saying, I'm not going to just be run by my neurological programming. That is very much a reflection of the energy and the vibration of the thought form that we're living in that gets imprinted on your thoughts, right? How do you say no to that? You say no to that by being conscious of how you use your mind. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for this ministry. I'm grateful for the rich and beautiful history that we have at Unity on the River. And I am grateful for the million dreams that we still have to create. Thank you.